everybody, Marlene, aka Snow Gardener 307. Happy Friday to you. We are here for budgeting basics. We've got two topics we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about Sharla's budget. We're going to get a weekly update from her. We're also going to talk about a topic that nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to think about. What do you do if you get laid off or you're not getting paid from your job? So let's go ahead and jump into today's video.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I wasn't looking forward to filming today's video. It's been a while since I've had that type of struggle. And it's because the two things that we're gonna talk about aren't exactly positive. We have Sharla's update. So let's go ahead and start with that. I will put her weekly budget right up here. And you guys are going to see as soon as I put it here, you're going to notice that we have a very small budget. And so I've got the paper right in front of me as always. You're going to see that her husband's paycheck was smaller than normal. So it was only $859. And as Sharla feared, child support did not come in again for Sharla and her family. I know this happens. I know for those of you guys that are dependent upon child support, it can make life really hard. And so Sharla's budget here, instead of having $1,400.87, they have $859. Luckily, Sharla made those choices last week to go ahead and pay the credit cards ahead of time. So she already paid Merrick, Chase, and Amazon. Whew, good job on that, Sharla. And she went ahead and put $700 towards the mortgage. That leaves $159, you guys. That is what's left. And so you see, for all of the cash, Sharla took the $159 and put it in her categories where she needs it. So this week's spending is going to be very minimal. Instead of $275, they only have $159 to spend. That includes on groceries, on household, on gas, on everything that they may possibly need. The good news is that Sharla does have some money in sinking funds that they can utilize, and they do have that emergency fund if they need it. But the bills are paid. They've got a little bit of money. This week might be one of those weeks where she needs to downsize her budget and cook meals that are much cheaper. The proteins might be in a minimum, right? If she uses 2 pounds of meat for a meal, they might have to go down to a pound. I also know that Sharla had a huge financial loss when her son left the freezer open and they lost a bunch of protein. So sometimes when it's raining, it's pouring, right? So a great big huge thank you to Sharla for sharing her budget update with us this week. It was not a good week, but this is reality. This is how life can be sometimes, and it can be very hard to figure out how to make ends meet. I'm so happy that this happened. Now that we've got all those buy now, pay laters already paid for, she looked ahead and thought, what is going to happen the next week? And that is what we need to do. That brings me into the next topic of today's video. And it is specifically hit our family. My son, Peyton, got laid off. He is 20 years old. He moved into his own apartment 10 weeks before he got laid off. And so I had no idea what Peyton needed to do with being laid off, because I have never been laid off, thank goodness. And so we started talking about one of the things that I think Peyton was super worried about was obviously getting a job, right? That's top priority. But I talked to him about unemployment. And this is where he was not informed. And I understand why. I am more informed now because my husband used to own his own business. And so we paid the state for the unemployment. Just in case you guys are not knowledgeable about unemployment, which I am not really very knowledgeable either. But if you don't understand how it works, it's at a state level. And your employer that you're working for pays into unemployment insurance to the state for you in the case that you get laid off or you have some other loss of employment that is covered by unemployment. Now, if you quit your job because you don't like it, you don't get unemployment. That's not how that works. And so for Peyton, a huge blow to the young man, because like I said, he got laid off 10 weeks after he moved into his own place. So I want to talk to you guys really quickly about what you should do in this situation and what you can do to prepare yourself just in case this happens. Because we have so many people in our country right now that are going without pay because of the government shutdown. And these people are having to make it work. Peyton's going to have to make it work. So I wrote myself a couple notes so that I could stay on track, because you guys know I tend to have little squirrel moments. So for Peyton, one of the first things I talked to him about was applying for unemployment. And he said, he goes, well, I don't want it to go against me and be negative on my employment record. I explained to him that unemployment is not a negative thing on your employment record at all. Peyton lost his job due to the company laying him off. And the reason why is that they just didn't have enough work. If you don't lay people off and you own a business and you don't have the work, then your company is not able to pay all the bills. Your company is going to have to shut down. So I explained that to Peyton. I also explained it to him that when my husband owned his business, he paid the state for every single employee that he had a certain amount every month for unemployment insurance. So that is how unemployment is funded. So I spoke to Peyton again today because he was waiting. He wanted to wait to see if he found a job so he didn't have to worry about it. Now, honestly, now that I look back, I believe he should have filed for unemployment that same day. The state of Wyoming, or the state that you're in, might say that you need to be unemployed for a certain amount of days or something before you can apply, but you need to do your research. And another thing that a lot of people have to worry about is benefits, right? Because if you've got a job where you've got healthcare, you've got all of these benefits, what are you going to do without them? If you are the sole breadwinner in your family and you have a family with children and you get laid off, that means your health insurance is usually cut off. For Peyton, luckily, he still has insurance through his father, and he will have insurance till he's 26. So that is one thing that he didn't have to worry about, and that is a nice thing. But what are you going to do about insurance? What are you going to do about paying your bills, right? So Peyton and I talked about it. Luckily, Peyton has an emergency fund. It's not as big as it probably should be, but he's got at least 2 or 3 months worth of expenses that he can pay his bills with. And so he is very fortunate there, because I can tell you, at 20, I did not have an emergency fund. I maybe had a couple $100 in savings. Of course, when I was 20, that was almost 30 years ago. So that was a long time ago, so I don't remember. And so find out about unemployment if you are one that is laid off. Now, of course, for what's going on with the government, I do know there's quite a bit of assistance for that as well. And I noticed that because when I get into my banking apps and like my credit cards and stuff like that, it asks if I am affected by the government shutdown. So I assume that these companies are working with people that are working and have not been paid, or maybe they've been furloughed, all of the different aspects there. So educate yourself before it happens to you. And this is one of the places I'll tell you guys right now, I didn't know enough about it. I still don't know enough about it. Of course, I am self-employed. So if I lay myself off, I don't get unemployment. But for my husband, we do need to know this. This is why we have a large emergency fund, of course. One thing as well, depending on the company that you work for and how long you've worked for them, you may get some sort of severance package. That is not the law, though. That is up to the company. And sometimes they are able to give you benefits for a certain amount of months after you've been laid off. So just keep that in mind. So one of the most important things that you can do if you are laid off is file for unemployment insurance as soon as possible. That will depend on your state. Most states, but not all, allow you to file unemployment for 26 weeks within a calendar year, I believe is how it works. Or maybe it's within a 12-month period. It just depends on the state. Now, how does unemployment amounts get decided? This goes by the state. This goes by how much you work, how much you make, all of that kind of stuff. But as I explained to Peyton, something is better than nothing. If he can get $200 a week to help buy groceries, to help pay a few bills, then it's better than absolutely nothing. And of course, in order to apply for unemployment insurance, you need to make sure that you've got something from your company that says that you have been laid off so that you can go. So I recommend that you do request for a severance letter or a letter that says you've been laid off from the company to make your life a little bit easier. Then you want to, of course, figure out what you need to do to keep the unemployment once you are approved for it. Most unemployment requires that you are willing to work, that you're looking for jobs, all of that kind of stuff. Peyton has filled out, I don't know how many applications. He has had multiple job interviews already, and he has not received a job yet. He's been laid off. I believe it's been like 10 days or something like that, but he has been looking for what he can. And there's been a couple jobs that he has applied to that he was not actually qualified for. And so that happens. But the good news is the more jobs that you apply for, the better you get at the interview process. You figure out what you need to know at the interview process and how to apply for the jobs. Now, some places might have a temporary agency where you can go apply there and you can work temp jobs, right? This can help get you by. Maybe in your town, you can walk dogs or do DoorDash or drive an Uber or something like that. That can always be an option. Maybe you can babysit somebody's children. Maybe you can rake up leaves, right? We're in that time of year, doing something to get some form of income coming in. And of course, as you're applying for jobs and stuff, you need to have a financial plan. If you have this much money going out, or I'm sorry, if you have this much money coming in, a big whopping zero, then you need to minimize the amount of money that's going out. So Peyton and I talked about that. And I told him, I said, your eating out budget should be zero. You should not be spending any money on eating out because you are home now. Make sure that you buy those cheaper foods, right? Like pastas, potatoes, all those basics so that you can cook mini meals out of them. And then, of course, if you are laid off for multiple months, you may need to cancel subscriptions. You may need to look at what other expenses that you have that are going out that are not your needs. You need to make sure that your four walls are paid for, right? You need to have enough money to pay for your home, your apartment, whatever you've got, your heat, your water, your power. You need to have enough money to purchase some food. If you are so distraught that you don't have money for food, look up in your area, find out for the food banks, find out what kind of assistance is available. Don't let your pride get in the way of asking for assistance. Assistance is there in time of needs. Now, of course, right now, with the government being shut down, there are a lot of benefits that people are not getting, and it is a hard time for people that may still be working, right? But normally maybe they get SNAP benefits or they get something like that, and right now that's not available. So we need to not be ashamed to ask for help. You can ask maybe family, friends, things like that, for a little bit of assistance during your time of need. Don't let your pride get in the way. And now, of course, we need to take what emergency savings you have, look at your bills, find out how long you can make it on your emergency save. Of course, most people try to have at least 3 to 6 months worth of emergency savings, but there's a lot of people that don't even have a month. And that we're looking at Sharla, right? At her situation, she has reached that $1,000, but that's all they've got. And we know $1,000 will not get Sharla and her family through an entire month. So now take these stories, stop wasting money on things you don't need, and get your emergency fund set up to help yourself if you're put in this situation. And like I said, luckily Peyton does have an emergency fund. However, him and I were talking about this. He has been wasting quite a bit of money since he moved out on his own. He is a 20-year-old, first time in his own place. And we tend to justify things, right? We tend to say, I've been working really hard. I deserve this. And this is the time when you've got to make sure that you are not justifying things that are not needs. We don't need as much as we think we need. For me, like, I don't need a chai tea that costs $7 or $8. That's quite a bit of money. If I were to take that to the store, I could get some fresh vegetables, a gallon of milk. I could get, plan for a few meals. Another thing for when you don't have money coming in is that food expense is one of those things. Look up online. There are so many videos for budget-friendly meals, how to shop, how to cut your expenses. If you are in the middle of summer and you've got your AC running on high all day to keep your place cool, maybe knock it up a little bit. If it's winter, go ahead and turn that thermostat down a couple degrees and put some sweatshirts on, get some blankets. There are ways to start cutting those pennies. So as a mom, I am so worried for my son. I know he will be okay, but it is so hard, even as a parent, to watch our children struggle. However, I know that this struggle will help Peyton be a better prepared adult because he's going through it now at such a young age. He's going to figure out that, wow, mom was right about keeping that money there and not going and spending it on silly stuff. Remember, stuff is just stuff. We don't need it. We buy so much stuff. And it's one of those things that we need to make sure that we can take care of ourselves, take care of our loved ones. Another option is if you are a single person and something happens, you can get a roommate, right? That can help pay the bills. If all of a sudden your rent is cut in half, wow, that takes a huge load off. And you've just got to figure out how to make it work. So I encourage you guys in your state to take a little bit of time, educate yourself on the unemployment system, see how it works for either you or somebody in your family. Like I said, for me, I really didn't know how it worked. I'm like, do you have to wait a certain amount of time before you apply? And of course, like Peyton, he thought it was a bad thing. So unemployment insurance is paid by your employer. It is paid by the state. It is a state-funded program that helps you make ends meet until you get that next job, because your employer, like Peyton's employer, laid him off without, justification for him to be fired or anything, even though we are a right to work state. But still, it is something there to help you. So that is today's video. Not a lot of great news. Like I said, for Sharla, I am so glad she had her crystal ball out and she's like, crystal ball, what's going to happen next week? And she thought that maybe that child support wouldn't be coming in. So we had child support, we had a short check, but they made it work. They're going to be okay. And Sharla, I know one of the things that she's done in the past to help make ends meet is she has made sourdough bread. If there's something that you can do. Another thing, when you get laid off, depending on how much emergency fund you have, maybe it's time to look deep inside of yourself and ask you if the career that you're in is the career that you want to be in. Is now the time that you could go get some extra training? You could acquire a new skill set. One of the things that Peyton's stepdad, Bridger, told him is you should look and see if you can get your CDL. Because if you get your CDL, it is going to open so many opportunities to you. And of course, blue collar workers, we're looking at our country now. We've got a shortage of plumbers, electricians, all of that type of stuff. And so it's just time to sit back, reflect, see exactly what you want to do. I know one thing with Peyton is he's applying for jobs where he'd be making quite a bit less money than what he was making. However, he understands the concept that some money coming in is better than none at all. All right, you guys, I hope you have a great weekend. And until I see you guys next week, remember to keep on smiling. Bye, everybody.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4.